Every year, claiming mistakes costs married couples thousands of dollars in Social Security benefits that they will never get back. Most people hear common advice. The lower earner gets 50% of the higher earner's benefit, and they think they're all set. But that's not how it actually works in practice. There are many different factors that actually shape what a spousal benefit will be, and that's why today we're breaking down the sometimes tricky rules for establishing what spousal benefits will be, and then we'll review the 4 biggest spousal Social Security traps and how to avoid them so that you can claim smarter and retire with more confidence. And stick around because the 4th one is the most important. I'm a financial planner and I've seen all kinds of Social Security scenarios firsthand. So let's get into it. Before we talk about any strategies, we need to make sure we're all on the same page with how spousal benefits actually work. Just to be clear, we're talking about retirement benefits here. A spouse can be entitled to qualify for many different types of Social Security benefits, survivor benefits, parental benefits, and those all follow different entitlement rules. We'll save those for other videos. To receive a spousal retirement benefit, a few conditions have to be met. First and foremost, if a higher earning spouse hasn't filed for their own benefit yet, the spousal benefit isn't available. You can't claim on someone else's record as a spouse until they've activated their own record. Beyond that, there are some core eligibility requirements. You must be legally married to the worker whose record you're claiming on. You must be at least 62 and have applied for benefits with the administration, and your own retirement benefit must be less than what you receive as a spousal benefit. Now, in most cases, you also need to be married for at least 1 year to qualify for a spousal benefit, but there are some common exceptions to that rule. For example, if you have a child together or you're already entitled to another Social Security benefit in the month before you got married, the 1 year requirement is waived. There are other exemptions, but those are the most common ones that we might see in retirement planning. There's also a separate set of rules for divorced spouses, and it surprises a lot of people. If you're divorced, you can still claim a spousal benefit on your ex-spouse's record, even if they've remarried. There's a whole set of rules on this. Your ex doesn't even need to know about this. Claiming on their record doesn't affect what they'll receive. It's completely separate. The divorced spouse rules deserve their own deep dive in some sense. So for today's video, let's talk about how the spousal benefit is calculated, because this is where the confusion starts. At full retirement age, which is 67 for anyone born after 1960, the maximum spousal benefit is 50% of the higher earning spouse's full retirement age benefit. That's the ceiling. It's not what everyone gets. But the benefit you actually receive is based on a calculation that takes into account your own earnings record. Here's how it works. Social Security first looks at your own full retirement age benefit based on your earnings record and what you've paid into Social Security. If you qualify for a spousal benefit, Social Security will add a spousal amount on top of your own benefit, so the total you can reach is up to that 50% level. The equation in plain English is this. Take half of the higher earner's full retirement age benefit, subtract your own full retirement age benefit, and the difference is the spousal portion that gets added. So if the higher earner's full retirement age benefit is $3,000, the maximum spousal benefit is $1,500. If your own benefit is $800, Social Security will add a $700 spousal amount to get you to that total of $1,500. Now, here's what's critical. This calculation is based on full retirement age amounts. If you claim early or late, those adjustments affect how much you'll actually receive. And that's where people start making some expensive mistakes. One last clarification before we move on. Retirement benefits and spousal benefits follow different age and adjustment rules. Your own retirement benefit can grow if you delay past full retirement age, earning what are called delayed retirement credits. But spousal benefits don't work that way. They max out at that full retirement age and don't grow beyond that. And that distinction matters because we're going to come back to it. So those are the mechanics, the eligibility, the calculation. Once you understand this framework, it becomes much easier to see where people might get tripped up. Now, let's walk through the 4 most common spousal Social Security traps. Here's the first mistake. It's incredibly common. The lower earning spouse claims their own retirement benefit on their worker record early, maybe at 62 or 63 because they're retired. They would like that extra cash flow because they think they can always switch to the spousal benefit later without consequence. But here's what actually happens. When you claim your own retirement benefit before that full retirement age, that benefit is permanently reduced. If your full retirement age is 67, you claim at 62, your benefit is reduced by 30%, and that reduction is permanent. It doesn't go away. So let's say a few years later, your higher earning spouse files for their benefit and you become eligible for that spousal increase. You might think, great, now I'll get 50% as a spousal benefit, and that early claiming penalty will disappear. But that's not how it works. Your spousal benefit will be 30% less if you claimed at that earliest possible moment. When you claim early, you didn't just reduce your own benefit to access it early, you also triggered the early claiming reduction on any future spousal benefits that you might receive. Social Security applies this reduction factor to the spousal portion as well as the original portion, so it's permanent. Instead of receiving that full spousal benefit that would bring you up to 50% on your spouse's record, you've locked in a reduced total amount for the rest of both your lives. Why does this happen? Because most people think of their own benefit and the spousal benefit as 2 separate decisions, but the Social Security Administration treats your claiming age decision as binding across both of those. Once you file early, that reduction will follow you for your spousal claiming decision. And here's the real impact. You're not just losing a few $100s. Over 20 or 30 years in retirement, this can cost you tens of thousands of dollars in benefits that you'll never recover. And because cost of living adjustments are applied as a percentage on those benefits, a smaller starting benefit means smaller raises every year, and that gap is going to grow and grow and grow. But here's what surprises people even more. Waiting too long as a lower earning spouse can be just as costly in a completely different way, and that's where we get to trap number 2. And this is really the flip side of trap number 1, and it catches a lot of disciplined savers. Let's say you're the lower earning spouse and you've heard all the advice about delaying Social Security to maximize your benefit. So you wait past your full retirement age, maybe 68, 69, 70, thinking that you're doing the smart thing. But here's the problem. If you're eligible for spousal benefits, that benefit does not earn any delayed retirement credits. So it maxes out when you reach that full retirement age and it does not grow at all beyond that. So let's walk through a scenario. If your full retirement age is 67, your own benefit would be $1,000 and the maximum spousal benefit you'd qualify for is $1,800, which is 50% of your own spouse's full retirement age benefit of $3,600. If you wait until 70 to claim, your own retirement benefit will grow by 24% due to the delayed retirement credit. So instead of $1,000, you're collecting more than $1,200. But remember, the spousal benefit is calculated with a maximum of 50% of your spouse's benefit. So at full retirement age, that difference was $800. But now that your own benefit has grown to over $1,200, the spousal add-on shrinks actually, and you get a reduced, so you're penalized for waiting. And that same amount, you would have received the same amount at 67, which means you just left money on the table every month that you delayed past claiming at full retirement age. Over 3 years, from 67 to 70, that could be over $64,000 in lost benefits. And you didn't gain anything by waiting because your spousal benefit didn't grow. And to be clear, this only happens if you're eligible for a spousal benefit that's higher than your own benefit. If your own benefit at 70 ends up being higher than the spousal benefit, it might make sense to delay or it might not. But for a lot of lower earning spouses, especially those with a significant earnings gap in the household, waiting past full retirement age for a spousal benefit is just leaving money on the table. And this is where another belief sneaks in, the idea that delaying is always the smartest move. So at this point, you might be thinking, how do I know which of these traps might apply to us? What might make sense? The honest answer is you really can't solve this very easily with rules of thumb. That's why we model the specific scenarios out with couples and offer a couple of different possible optimal choices. Because the right claiming strategy depends on ages, earning histories, health, taxes, investments, and how all of these many interconnected variables actually come together. So if you want to see what your own numbers look like and whether you're about to walk into one of these traps, I've got a link in the description where you can submit information and request a free 5-minute mini review. We'll walk through some basics on your situation and give you some personalized feedback and thoughts. Now, let's go into the next two traps because this is where everything really starts to compound. Trap number 3 is believing that delaying is always better without coordinating ages and earnings. This trap builds on what we talked about in the last one, but it actually goes a little bit deeper. There's a belief in financial planning, and it's repeated almost everywhere in the financial industry, that delaying Social Security, especially for the higher earning spouse, is almost always the right move. Wait until 70, you'll maximize your lifetime benefits if you live a long time. You lock in those delayed retirement credits. And for a lot of people, that advice might be very valid and make sense. If you're healthy, if you expect to live a long time, if you don't need income early, delaying can increase your lifetime benefits significantly. But there are trade-offs. And here's what gets missed when we're looking at spousal scenarios. That advice is almost always given in isolation. It focuses on maximizing one person's benefit without considering the effect on the whole household. So let's say you're a married couple. One spouse earns significantly more over their career and the other spouse has a much smaller benefit, or maybe no benefit at all because they stayed at home and raised kids. If the higher earner delays until 70 to maximize their benefit, that could sound smart on paper, but what if the lower earning spouse is a few years older and has already hit their full retirement age? They could be collecting a spousal benefit right now, but they can't because the higher earner hasn't filed yet. So while the higher earner is busy maximizing their individual benefit, the household is missing out on years of spousal benefits. And remember, those spousal benefits won't grow and accrue delayed retirement credits. Every month, the higher earner waits past the lower earner's full retirement age is a month of income the household is giving up for limited gain. And then there's the survivor benefit angle. If the higher earner delays until 70 and then passes away early in retirement, yes, the surviving spouse will receive the higher survivor benefit based on that increased amount, but the household may have given up years of combined income to get there. And if the surviving spouse lives another 20 or 30 years, that might work out. But if they don't, the household has really just lost. This is why you can't just follow blanket advice. You have to really model out the scenario. And all of these mistakes usually come from one bigger problem, and that is making these Social Security decisions in isolation. This is the trap that ties everything together, and really, it's potentially the most expensive one. Most people approach Social Security claiming as if it's a series of individual decisions or just Social Security decisions. When should I file? When should my spouse file? They think about this in a vacuum, but Social Security benefits for married couples are linked. The order you file, the timing, the age gaps, the earnings gaps, and when you make each decision separately and not considering the broader financial strategy with taxes, with investments, there's a real potential to miss out on some significant planning opportunities. Here's what I mean. Let's say a lower earning spouse claims early at 62 because they want the income. That's trap 1. They've locked in that permanent reduction to their own benefit, but also the future spouse benefit. Then if the higher earning spouse is trying to delay and maximize the survivor benefit, it might sound smart in isolation, but trap 2, the lower earner has been missing out on the higher earner spousal benefit because there's years where the higher earner hadn't filed yet. And the household gave up years of that combined income by delaying the higher earners filing. And they never modeled out these trade-offs and if they had made sense given their ages and health. Now, let's say the higher earner passes away first. The surviving spouse will receive a survivor benefit based on what the higher earner was receiving. And that's good because the lower earner claimed early, their own benefit was reduced. And even though the surviving benefit will be higher, the entire financial scenario may have missed out on a lot of opportunities, maybe tax planning opportunities in those early years they could have had if they agreed on a strategy that considered all of the different elements. This may seem small. These types of errors can have a big impact over time, especially when you consider the time value of the money that they're missing out on. Some mistakes, when you consider all that goes into it and the impact on your investments, could add up to hundreds, thousands, maybe tens of thousands of dollars or more. Now, there's no way of knowing what the future is going to hold for everyone when it comes to how long we'll live or what exactly investments will do in the future, but we can coordinate a strategy and make a decision that puts all of the pieces together, because there are probably multiple different schools of thoughts that might make sense when it comes to Social Security. But you really have to decide on an approach that gives you a real chance to come out on top, to be optimal or even just close to optimal. Doing it separately and not thinking through how this is all going to come together puts you at risk to leave some really big money on the table. I've run many scenarios for couples and seen the difference between optimized claiming strategies and default claiming strategies add up to potentially over $100,000 in some situations. And once these decisions are made, there's a small do-over window, but generally they are permanent. There's no do-over. So the question isn't when should I claim? The question is, how do we coordinate our benefits with our overall financial strategy to maximize for our unique situation and needs? And that is a completely different question. So what is the solution? The solution is to stop thinking about Social Security as an individual decision and start thinking about it as a coordination problem. What couples actually want is to responsibly set themselves up and retire comfortably, to have a good chance to grow their wealth within a reasonable amount of risk. They want to know that they're not leaving senseless money on the table. They want to know that the surviving spouse is going to be okay, and they want to make these decisions with confidence in a framework instead of just guessing. And the only way to do that is really to model it out, not with rules of thumb, not with general guidance that they heard from a neighbor or online, but with their actual numbers. That means analyzing the situation, running different scenarios that account for earnings histories, health, life expectancy, investments, taxes. It means testing these different filing orders and seeing what happens to lifetime income and survivor benefits in all these scenarios. It's looking at the household as a whole, not just individual Social Security checks. And here's why it matters. When you model things out, you often find that the default strategy that feels comfortable may not necessarily be the optimal one. Maybe the higher earner should file earlier than they thought. Maybe the lower earner might file later. Maybe there's a coordination strategy at play that includes their investment assets and tax picture, and that might attain a strong lifetime income profile and survivor protection, maybe without even waiting till 70. But you won't know until you actually run these numbers, and that's exactly what we help couples do. We model scenarios out, we show you what's at stake, and we help you walk through trade-offs so you can make the decision that's right for your household. That's all in the context of financial planning that includes the big picture. So let's bring this back. We've walked through the spousal Social Security traps. And the cost isn't just a few dollars. It can be potentially thousands of dollars over a lifetime. But there's good news. If you're watching this video before you filed, you still have time to get it right. If you want to know whether you're about to fall into one of these traps or how much is actually at stake for your household, that's exactly what we help people model through financial planning. And I've got a link in the description where you can request a free mini 5-minute Loom video review. If you fill out the quiz, we will review the information and we will send you a free video where we'll walk through some of the basics and we'll show you what your numbers look like so you have some feedback to work with. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.